Hello. Beep, beep, beep. Morning. Edijester. Once again, Jester Towers. Me. All the news. News, new and approved. Beep, beep, beep. All that rubbish. Right. Scott Pag. Scott Pag writes extensively on the subject of gender identity. And I've got a bit to say about that as we come up. Now, please do like, subscribe, click on notifications, buy me a coffee if you can. Come be a warrior teacher. You can join me now on Twitter, on YouTube. You can support me in that way if you can. And my thanks, as always, to everyone who does, because it does keep me going. We're heading now en masse into the month that is December. God help us. The only thing that's good about December is the fact that it precedes January. Everybody be out there celebrating Christmas. Bah humbug, says I, the Scrooge of Jester Towers. But what have we got today from Scott Pag on gender identity ideology, one of the things that animates us and keeps us going in our fight to protect children from the butchery this entails. GII, gender identity ideology, the conveyor belt of suggestibility from scottpag.com. Links as usual for you in the tubers. Evidence that puberty blockers harm children is already prevalent, but how to stop the conveyor belt of suggestion that leads towards their use? There's an interesting opening there asking us, where do we need to begin to cut off the oxygen that keeps the lie of trans and gender identity alive? West Streeting has given the go-ahead to progress a puberty blockers trial on children, which raises major ethical and moral concerns. Indeed he has. Many individuals and groups, including Scott Pag, have sounded the alarm regarding the clear harms to children and teenagers that this trial is likely to cause. It is clear that much more thought and consideration should be given to the data and evidence already available, and that such a trial should be avoided to retain ethical and moral integrity. Scott Pag, along with many other organisations, has written to Streeting, urging him to think again. You know how hard, so does Scott Pag, by the way, you know how hardcore I am about this. You don't need a bloody study to tell us that this is a social contagion created by gusset fumblers. You don't. And you don't need a study to tell you that most of the teenagers are gay or lesbian or autistic or whatever it may be, and that once they start on this train track, it's end of story. You don't need a study for that. You just need a moral backbone. But at the same time, says Scott Pag, further consideration is also required in order to identify exactly what caused children and teenagers, and sometimes parents, to seek out such harmful treatment in the first place. The issue of suggestive power has not, as far as this author can ascertain, been considered in any real depth to date. The concept of suggestion and its psychological effects refers to the phenomenon where external cues, words or influence shape an individual's perceptions, memories and behaviours. Now, this is really interesting from Scott Pag off the back of my Red Pill, Blue Pill article. I wonder if Scott Pag's read it. I must drop them a line. Considerable awareness has been raised by Scott Pag and others about the impact on children and teenagers by gender identity ideology via social contagion. There are certainly clear links between social contagion and the power of suggestion. Social contagion is a phenomenon where ideas and beliefs are unconsciously spread and reinforced between individuals and groups. But the concept of suggestion differs in its intent in that it is driven by an agent seeking a specific outcome. In the case of gender identity ideology, to groom, indoctrinate and convince children that they were born in the wrong body and need to change their sex. Do you see there? Really laying out what we're seeing and what actually is the problem there. Children's cognitive faculties are immature and constantly developing, and so the power of suggestion is amplified for them. At its core, the psychology of suggestion hinges on the brain's susceptibility to the external influences that guide perception and action. Psychologists describe suggestion as a process where one individual directs another's mental state, often leading to altered beliefs or behaviours. Now, this is great. This is really great because it ties in with some of the stuff I'm looking at, which is, in our education system, we've done away, it seems, with critical thinking. Now, there's a number of reasons why that's occurred, and I've covered them many times before. But what we must certainly look at is how we came to begin teaching kids that there's a specific way to see, i.e. the process of seeing the world, which is the activist teacher's way of seeing the world, rather than going, hang on, this doesn't add up. Because we're not even telling them how to participate in that particular way. We're not, in fact, preparing them for the world. This ties in very much to what Scott Pag is saying here. It's quite something, for example, for our Scottish government to have providing teacher resources and schools guidance in which the false concept of gender identity ideology have been embedded throughout. Now, that's very interesting. The embedded throughout bit there. What you must understand, I think, if you're a newcomer in particular to this sphere, is that when Scott Pagg says embedded throughout, I'm going to go with the assumption that they mean it's across the curricula, because you'll have it in history. EDI, DEI is a template, right? You put it over the top. Gender identity ideology is one part of the template. So you then go into maths and it will say John, who is non-binary, and Judy, who is trans, have got 3 apples. That's what they're doing, right? Or the wolf becomes the good guy in Red Riding Hood. Indoctrination, yeah? There is also evidence that such product placement of a false and counterfactual ideology has impinged on the unconscious motivations of school staff and some parents who have, either wittingly or unwittingly, pushed children into dangerous territory. Often used for the purpose of advertising, research demonstrates that deliberate suggestion can enhance memory performance, shift preferences for products, and even modify physical responses, such as pain perception or immune function. This occurs because suggestions exploit cognitive biases. The mind fills in gaps with implied information, creating a reality aligned with the cue. For instance, subtle priming can expose individuals to words or images and can unconsciously steer thoughts and decision making. This is absolutely fascinating from Scott Pagg. And again, I imagine they're going to watch this. I would push you towards the work of Edward Bernays, the godfather of propaganda, and see how his work has been perverted, because he specifically warned us, do not use this for education. But yeah, that's all we've done since the 1980s. He said, do not use it. This concept of what he would call the engineering of consent. This again came up in my article about the red pill or the blue pill. So this really is a most timely intervention from Scott Pagg that adds to that conversation. You know, and I know, we all know that once children, because that's what we're talking about, children, are on that path to those puberty blocking heavens that everybody keeps talking about, that a massive percentage of them will go on to have cross-sex hormones, and then another percentage will go on to butcher their body in the name of the cult of EDI and gender identity ideology. So what we have here is a great article positing and talking about what's the pathway that's working, what is the psychological element that is driving this forward. And I think that you will find that very interesting. So I do urge you to go and read Scott Pagg's article there. Conveyor belt, good term. Conveyor belt is really a good way to describe it. Please do go and have a read. I've got the link in the doobers for you as usual. Other than that, come be a warrior teacher. Come on, new year, new start for you. We've got a lot to fight now. It really is heating up. That's the only way I can describe it. I'll see you a little bit later on. Thank you very much for watching as usual. Bye-bye.